Okay, try to imagine this. For 1,000 years, if you were a Christian living in Western Europe, there was pretty much just one church. That's it, a single, unified faith. And then, bam, in just a few decades, it completely shatters into thousands of different pieces. So today, we're going to dig into that historical explosion, the Protestant Reformation.
And yeah, that's really the big question, right? How does something that massive, that powerful, just break? The story is incredible. It's got a frustrated monk, a game-changing new invention, and a massive power struggle that literally reshaped the entire continent. So, let's dive in.
All right, so to really get why this whole thing happened, we have to look at the situation before the explosion. What was the world like when there was just this one giant church?
You know, it's hard to overstate this. The Catholic Church wasn't just a place you went on Sundays. It was everything. Think of it like the entire operating system for society. It had a hand in crowning kings, making laws. It was completely woven into the fabric of everyday life for literally everyone. For most people back then, the church was their world.
But, and this is a big but, under the surface, things were not okay. Serious cracks were starting to show. People were getting really fed up with a bunch of things. For starters, you had the sale of these things called indulgences. Then there was just widespread corruption. The Pope had like absolute power over everything. And get this, the Bible, the most important book in their faith, was only in Latin, a language that almost nobody could actually read. You can see why people were starting to get restless.
So what were these indulgences anyway? Well, here's a good way to think about it. Imagine your teacher gives you extra homework because you messed up in class. Now, what if you could just pay the teacher a bit of money to get out of it? That's kind of what the church was doing. They were saying you could pay them to reduce your punishment for sins. And yeah, you can imagine how unfair that felt, right? Especially if you were poor. It just looked like the rich were buying a fast pass to heaven.
Okay, so you've got all this frustration just bubbling under the surface. It was a real pressure cooker. And you know, eventually someone was bound to say something. That someone turned out to be a German monk and professor named Martin Luther, and he had just had enough.
So in 1517, Luther makes his big move. He writes up this list of 95 points, or theses, arguing against what the church was doing, and he really goes after the sale of indulgences. And then, in this move that has become legendary, he walks up and nails that list to the church door in Wittenberg. He was basically calling for a public debate, but what he got was a revolution.
And this is where the story gets a technology twist. In another time, Luther's protest might have just been a small local argument. But there was a new invention that changed everything: the printing press. Suddenly, for the first time ever, you could mass produce an idea. His 95 Theses got copied and printed and spread all over Europe like wildfire. I mean, it was the 16th century version of going viral, and the church had no way to stop it.
Now, it's super important to understand, this wasn't just a list of complaints. Luther and the other reformers were asking some really deep questions and coming up with brand new answers. Questions like, what's the Bible's real purpose? And how does a regular person actually connect with God? And if you look at the core beliefs, you can see just how different their answers were. The Catholic Church taught that you're saved by your faith plus the good things you do. The Protestants said, nope, it's by faith alone. The Church said authority comes from the Bible and from church tradition. The Protestants said, nope, it's the Bible alone. They even took the 7 sacraments and cut them down to just 2. I mean, we're not talking about a small tweak here. This was a total rewrite of what it meant to be a Christian.
So, as you can imagine, these ideas didn't just stay in academic debates. They absolutely exploded across Europe. They shattered that religious unity we talked about and led to brand new churches, new leaders. The whole map of Europe was about to be redrawn. And it wasn't just about Luther anymore. Once the floodgates were open, other leaders jumped in. You had John Calvin over in Switzerland, who started another huge branch of Protestantism. And then, of course, there's the famous story of King Henry VIII in England. He broke away from the Catholic Church for, well, let's just say more personal reasons. Basically, he wanted a divorce. The Pope said no, so Henry said, fine, I'll start my own church. And just like that, the Church of England was born. And just look at what happened. That one solid block of a church just fractured into all these different groups. All of a sudden, you've got Lutherans, you've got Calvinists, Anglicans, and other groups popping up all over the place, each with their own take on things. That old, unified Christian map of Europe, it was gone. For good.
But here's a really key point. This wasn't just about religion. Not at all. It was more like a perfect storm of religion, politics, and money. Think about it. If you're a king or a queen, this is a golden opportunity to break free from the Pope's influence, grab a ton of church land and money, and become way more powerful. And at the same time, you have this rising class of merchants who are tired of church rules getting in the way of business. The Reformation was the perfect excuse for everyone to make a move. And this is where we really see the long-term impact that honestly still affects us today. By taking power away from the Pope, the Reformation gave a huge boost of authority to individual kings and queens. It was this massive shift away from a single international religious power and toward individual states. It was a huge step in creating the modern countries we have on the map right now.
Yeah, one of the sources we looked at sums it up perfectly. It calls the Reformation a pivotal event influenced by political, social, and economic factors. And that's the key takeaway, right? It wasn't just one thing. It was this incredibly complex revolution that changed absolutely everything about how people saw their world, their leaders, and even themselves.
So that really leaves us with a final question to chew on. When you think about the incredible diversity of beliefs we see today, or even the basic idea of separating church and state, all of these things have roots in this massive split from 500 years ago. The echoes are literally all around us. So, what do you think is the most important legacy of the Reformation? It's definitely something worth thinking about.